Welcome to Women of a Certain Stage, the podcast redefining how we think about menopause. I'm your host, Lauren Turin, a passionate advocate for breaking the stigma and empowering individuals to navigate this transformational stage of life with confidence and clarity. Here, we're diving into a new era of menopause support, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and actionable insights. Whether you're curious about building your personal menopause plan or you're looking to make an impact, you're in the right place. Let's embrace the change together. So, Ali, I'm super excited about having this conversation with you today, and it's been such a pleasure to work with you on the Menopause Coach Diploma. But before we even talk about that, I would love you just to tell people a little bit about who you are as a human being, what lights you up, and a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, I suppose I'm a bit of a square peg in a round hole. Well, I always have been throughout my life. Actually, someone asked me what my title would be for a TED Talk, and I said straight away, square peg, round hole. So I've had quite a checkered kind of history in terms of work and personal history. So I would say I'm a bit of a social butterfly. But that kind of covered up maybe some of my lack of confidence underneath. I make up for it by connecting with people and being in communities and just putting myself out there, because I find that's the best way to combat it. Well, that has always been the best way for me anyway to combat it. Outside of work, I have had quite a life of on and off trauma, I suppose, with my mum being diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 17. That had a massive influence on my life. And I treasured her greatly and really admired her for how she went through life, because she never let it get her down and was out there and saying that everyone else was worse off than hers. Did she have to complain about? So, and I've really based my kind of going forward, my career and my home life on sort of her principles, I suppose.
How would you sum up her principles?
Oh, she was a real fighter, and always cared about other people above herself. Had so much empathy for other people. And she, very much like me, didn't ever show her kind of internal insecurities. And she felt that family was really important to her. And looking after myself and my sister as we grew up was a real focus, and being everything to everyone, really.
All the time, presumably.
Yes. Yeah.
It's fascinating I think so many of us have those insecurities. I wonder if it's not really just how most people are built, that most people do have those insecurities, and we just find different ways to mask them, to cope with them, to deal with them. And some of us are better at finding ways to do that than others. And I see it very much in menopause, that I'll have a conversation with somebody before they come on the Menopause Coach Diploma, and they might have a doubt that maybe the program will give them what they need, or they might have a doubt in themselves that they'll be able to make use of it and moving forward. In fact, I have an AI company now, and I'll be telling you more about that soon. But the interesting part of it is it's really helped expedite a lot of what I do with my business, and it'll be something I'll be sharing with grads obviously going forward. But I've sat on it for nearly a year because I was like, oh, who am I to talk about AI? And, what have I got that can really go out into the world? And so it's going to be really interesting when I start to launch that and bring that into the world as well. So I think life is like new level, new devil, new level, new devil. There's always something that kind of biting away at our heels, making us question our validity or our confidence or whatever. So it sounds like you said, a life full of kind of on and off trauma. That's a big deal. And, to have something like that happen at a very formative time in your life must really had an impact on you. How big a difference is there between you and your sister?
There's about 18 months between us.
Oh, and are you close?
Yes, they are quite close. We're very, very different. Very different, yeah. And she's very much an out there person, and she works in PR and media, and she's always been very, very confident. And I think as a child, I was always the quiet one with my head in the books and just really not saying much to anyone. I'm just being quite keeping myself to myself, really, I suppose, but always taking in everything that was going on around me. And I think as I was growing up as well, my mum really confided in me about the journey with because I've always been interested in the facts, what she was going through, and I think she felt that she could just speak to me about it. She absolutely didn't want me to share everything that she'd shared with me, with my dad or my sister.
Oh, interesting.
Which was it was quite a difficult dynamic, actually. I felt really privileged that she felt able to share some of her insecurities and how she was feeling. And also a lot of the medical information that, she was given. She always used to get me to read her letters, ask me what I thought. That was a real honor, but it also was quite hard at times, keeping that to myself when, when the rest of my family didn't always know what was going on.
Isn't it interesting that no matter what we go through in life or what's thrown at us, it's about how we respond to it and the story we tell ourselves about it. So you could look at that and go, it was really unfair to be put in that position and carry that burden, or what a privilege and an honor to be able to have that closeness and be that confidant. And, somewhere in between there, other people will have different opinions about it going forward. But the only thing that matters is your experience, because it was you that it was happening to.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite similar to everything in life. But when we talk about menopause, I know you had an interesting, shall we say, experience and journey when it comes to all things menopause, whether it was work or healthcare or, anything really. But what was it when we kind of fast forward to the last couple of years, we think about you starting to think about training to become a menopause coach. What was it that led you up to that point?
Up to the point where I came along to one of your 3-day taster sessions. I hadn't really thought about it much at all. I had previously worked on a project called Staying Well at Work, which was European funded. And mental health and health and wellness has always been a big passion of mine all through my life. And wanting to go out there and support and help other people. Because I've always found that I'm not that good at supporting myself, but I'm much better at helping other people. So I spoke to a colleague at another organisation that actually came on the course with me as well. That's Caroline. And she said she was going to train as a menopause coach. And I just noticed that. I had no idea what it was. And I said, you know what? I'm really, really struggling at the moment with menopause. I think I need your help. And I got to the point where I decided to leave my career in HR. And I got talking to Caroline again and was exploring what I might do afterwards. I looked at coaching and I looked at the menopause. And I just got really interested because I thought, well, no one seems to be able to help me at the moment on my journey. And I felt really uneducated about menopause and what was going on because I hadn't really any other people's experience to go on. I talked to friends, but because my mum went through sort of surgical menopause and kind of overnight, it was the last thing on my mind at that time to go, well, what's going on there, because I was more interested in going to live and seeing you to grow up.
Yeah, of course. And I'm just curious that you said, you weren't that educated. I'm curious, what sort of things were you trying at that time? What sort of things were you considering and where were you trying to get help and support?
Well, in terms of the help and support, I was just told that I was perimenopausal. About
who told you that, and how did they come to that conclusion?
Well, I went to our doctor's surgery, and saw a nurse practitioner. And I said to them, look, I'm really, really struggling at the moment. I can't seem to think straight, and I'm feeling really kind of like something's not quite right. And I've always usually in the past been able to handle everything and juggle lots of balls. And I just feel completely like lost, that I don't really know who I am anymore. And I really did feel like that. I didn't feel like I was me anymore. And I had no energy, I wasn't sleeping. And I was experiencing hot flushes. But I'd actually had hot flushes previously. And I just thought it was anxiety. And that I lost my confidence and I was just no good for what I was doing anymore.
So when you were told that you were perimenopausal, what support were you offered at that point?
None really, none at all. So I had a blood test done at the time.
What age were you when you had the blood test done?
I was about 52, just about.
What were they testing for?
I don't really know, Lauren, at the time. They were just testing for hormone levels.
That's really fascinating, isn't it? We'll sit there and put our arm out and let them take blood, but we don't actually know what they're doing with that blood.
No, well, when they told me I was perimenopausal, because I'd been on a progesterone-only contraceptive for all my life, I didn't know that anything was amiss because I hadn't had any menstrual bleeds at all. How was I to know? And they just said to me, the only way we can know whether you're going through menopause or not is you need to come off that and we'll measure your, do your blood levels and see whether you are perimenopausal. And then 12 months later, if you haven't had a bleed, then you're postmenopause.
Was that on the National Health Service?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's very unusual for them to do a blood test. Normally they would just say at that age, over 45, they normally wouldn't do bloods. So that's really interesting that they did that. So they did the bloods, and then what happened?
Well, they did the bloods, told me I was perimenopausal, told me to come off contraception. And that was it, really.
What was their rationale for telling you to come off contraception?
Because so I would know.
Okay.
Menopause.
So, okay. And was it more important to you, this is just genuine human interest question, was it more important for you to know whether you were menopausal or not, as opposed to being on contraception? I mean, at that age, normally that would be when they would be having that conversation anyway, because the average age is 51, and they would normally say, by 52, they would be having that conversation. But was there any part of you being involved in this decision? Or was it just that was what they recommended?
No, it was what they recommended. And to be honest with you, at the time, I really didn't know anything about menopause. I'm one of these people that had obviously stayed away from it all. I had delivered a session around menopause when I worked on the project, but at the time I just didn't think, it was relevant to me. And it was very relevant in the workplace. And I'd supported other people, but I just didn't really think about the sort of my own.
Oh, the irony.
I know, it's really ironic, isn't it? And I can't believe I didn't know anything about it. So I just said, so what does that mean? And they just, first of all, they said, well, you've only got really hot flushes, so you haven't got any other symptoms. And at the time, I had loads of symptoms.
You've just listed about 7 or 8 symptoms.
But I think the difficulty was that I didn't really know that they were perimenopausal symptoms.
Got you. So were you offered any treatment pathways, or was there any discussion about how to manage your perimenopause at that point?
There was no discussion whatsoever. I was only just told that I wouldn't be able to have HRT because of my familial history. Yeah.
So was your mum's breast cancer estrogen receptive?
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was even a lack of clarity on that.
Yeah. And I'd never been gene tested either. So, because
this is so interesting.
Yeah. And there was no real advice. And I was more worried about, going to get pregnant. I wasn't really thinking about Well, what's
age 52?
I know, it's mad, isn't it? Totally mad. But I probably didn't ask the right questions because I didn't really know what.
You didn't know.
No.
You didn't know what to
No.
ask because we weren't brought up in a generation that talked about menopause. We weren't educated on it.
No. I have no
Fascinating.
idea.
I love the fact that you delivered a session for work.
Yeah.
And then
And I didn't really.
the whole penny dropped after the event. That's brilliant. I'm going to remember that for life.
Well,
I think
talked
that
about
is
all
brilliant.
symptoms and how it can affect people in the workplace. But none of that had really gone in because I was delivering something for my job and I hadn't really thought, well, how does this actually relate to me?
But how would you do that session differently now? How would you feel and how would you be able to respond to questions if you were doing that session now differently?
Oh, I would do it really differently now.
So let me, before you just jump into that, I think that's making a really good point because there's so many people who are jumping into delivering menopause awareness, training, sessions, policy, strategy, whatever it is. And that's great because we need more and we need as many people as possible. There's a very big difference to doing it based on reading a few facts online and having that proper in-depth training. You don't have to have been through it yourself. You don't need to have a personal experience with menopause, but just having some proper training that helps you understand what the difference is between average age is 51. It typically happens between 45 and 55, all of those kind of well-known facts. So how would you do it differently now?
Well, I would present it very differently now because I would give some of those facts, what's actually going on in your body, because I have no idea. And, what the kind of things are to look out for, because it's not just about hot flushes, but I was led to believe that was kind of the main symptom. I haven't really taken in all the other symptoms and how it could really impact on people in the workplace. So the crazy thing was that with the talk that we did was all about how people could put things in place in the workplace. And we did say all the right things.
Yeah.
None of them really resonated because no one was doing that kind of work at the time. This is, quite a few years back. And it was all a bit of I think it was quite medicalised and looking more from the health angle. So I did it in conjunction with our team who were occupational health nurse, counsellor, physiotherapist. So all the join-up was there, but the lack of deeper understanding we didn't have at all. So we didn't really talk about hormones in any much detail. So, that was the big difference. Why I came to learn more about it.
What did you take away from the 3-day event?
That there was so much more to menopause than I understood. And I thought, oh my goodness, crikey, I don't know anything. And I did really come away with that thinking, the impact is huge compared to what I was led to believe.
Yeah.
And what I understood, and that gap in my knowledge was massive. And I came away thinking, if only I'd known some of that before, and I maybe would have recognised the signs. I mean,
what do you think you'd have done differently if you had known?
If I had known, I would have asked different questions, like, about why did I need to have a blood test and what were they testing for and what were the implications and what treatment plan was that? I would have asked so much more. I mean, eventually I did get access to that, but at the time it was kind of like, well, okay, so what does that mean then?
So take me on the journey from your bloods and you've not been given any treatment to then eventually you got, what was the journey towards you finally getting some form of treatment?
Yes. Well, I went to a menopause specialist clinic, but after having the blood test, I then had a massive crash from coming off contraceptive. And that's the only thing I could think that it was at the time. And my estrogen levels were fairly low when they did the test. We know that that's not necessarily accurate. And I believe that I just went through a massive crash and experienced everything in sort of really small confined space of time. I was at the height of my career. I was really happy in my home life. I just got engaged to my partner, and everything should have been amazing. And I just felt, I just felt miserable, unhappy, and just questioning what's going on. Why can't I cope with any of this? So I kept going back to the doctors, and because I was experiencing really awful headaches, terrible headaches that was so debilitating. And I did eventually go for a brain scan because my mum had brain tumours in the final stages of her life. And I just immediately thought, my God, I haven't got brain tumour. Because I couldn't focus. My head was swimming. I couldn't really focus on a screen. All my work was remote. I was sleeping. I was lying awake for hours and waking up in the morning like I hadn't ever gone to bed. And it was just awful. I couldn't concentrate. I was so tired, exhausted. I kept going back and saying, I'm exhausted. What can I do? I'm getting these awful headaches. What can I do? And eventually I did some reading myself and thought, right, okay, if I can't have HRT, not that I really knew much about it, I will look into what else might I be able to do. Again, thinking of it as more of a medical solution rather than a more holistic approach. So I asked to try SSRIs, are good for vasomotor symptoms. And that was a last-ditch attempt for me because there had been put on a waiting list and a specialist clinic. Every time I rang them, they said, oh, it's another 6 months wait, another 6 months. I kept thinking, I can't wait that long. I really can't wait that long. And so I tried these triple SRIs, triple SR, and I think it completely pushed me over the cliff edge. The headaches were awful, and I just really sunk to an all-time low, and I felt fit. I just had every single thing that was on the contraindication leaflet, and I just, oh my God, this is a nightmare. But the funny thing was, in the middle of that, Lauren, I just needed to prove to myself that I was still me. I was still inside there. And I actually decided that I was going to go and learn how to ride a motorbike. Absolutely
Love it.
mad. Absolutely mad. But that's the kind of person I've always been. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to prove to myself I can actually do something. And there I was on the morning of when we were supposed to be doing the test. I tried the drugs the week before and had this awful crash, and I thought, I'm going to come off them. I asked a friend for some advice, and she said, well, you could take half the tablet, but I'd be careful about coming off them. I said, I've only been on them a few days and I'm so bad. Good, I'm off them. I went over and learnt to ride a motorbike. Oh my goodness, it was so hard. I'm a keen horse rider, so I said to my partner at one point, oh, it can't be much harder than riding a horse.
Different ballgame altogether.
Oh, absolutely.
How was your partner during this whole process? What was going on there?
I think he just didn't know what was going on for me. And I said to him, I think I'm struggling with menopausal symptoms, but I don't seem to be able to articulate what I'm going through or be able to get any support. The thing was, I didn't really understand what was going on myself, let alone to be able to ask the right things in terms of support.
So how long did it take you from, starting this whole process about having bloods and all of that to ultimately getting to see a menopause specialist?
Nearly 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And during that time you got engaged?
Yes.
I love this. So I just have to interject. So anyone that listened to the conversation with Mel, she also got engaged and married during the time that she was on the Menopause Coach Diploma and going through her own personal transformation. So I wonder if there's something in the air here. It's really interesting. Very interesting. I'm just highlighting it because I think there's so many times I speak to people that have the opposite experience where the relationships break down. So I think it's a really good story of hope. And that's why I just wanted to highlight it. So you go to your menopause specialist clinic, and how was the experience different there?
It was worse, if anything, Lauren. It was terrible. I'd already started on the diploma when I went, and I'm ever grateful for everything that I learned from the diploma, because the one thing that really lasted and stayed with me was about asking for help and receiving help. So I went armed with information. It was a virtual consultation, actually. Mm-hmm. And we had tech issues. And apparently I was late going into the waiting room, which possibly might have been the case.
We're dealing with menopause here, let's face it.
So I went into the waiting room. Well, I rang the lady and said I can't get in. And she rang me back. The doctor rang me back. And we were supposed to be in half an hour ago. And I said, well, why does it say that? I said, I was looking for the meeting invitation, which is hidden there amongst everything else, because I'd had so many different documents from different doctors. It was really confusing. And basically, in the course of the conversation, I felt like what I heard was everything was being blamed on me, that I should have understood what I was going through. I should have had the knowledge. Why wasn't I doing these different things? And that I basically should have done a lot for myself, and that I was overweight, and I didn't have a healthy lifestyle. And when I'd broken my foot, which I had broken in between time, I didn't dare tell her how I did it, because I dropped the motorbike on my foot.
That might find some character in the conversation, who knows?
Yeah, but I'd said to her that I'd done a lot of horse riding. A few years earlier, I'd broken my ribs and had a nasty fall. And as she just said in the conversation, well, it's probably a good job you don't do that anymore, or as much, because you're very high risk for osteoporosis. And then she also told me that I'm very likely to get breast cancer in the next few years. And that was shocking, actually, really shocking. It still makes me feel quite emotional inside, because if I had been in the place that I'd been in earlier that year, when I was at my very lowest and I was really quite desperate, and I never thought I'd ever feel the way I felt. I just didn't know where to turn, and I was at an all-time low and really couldn't see a way out. If she told me that then, that could have been the tipping point. And that was really irresponsible, really irresponsible. And this was someone that was a professional clinic. Bizarrely, though, it was in the sexual health clinic, which I kind of thought was a bit weird at the time, but I could see the correlation now. Yeah, and she basically said, right, well, you need to go for another mammogram because of breast pain, and you need to do this, and you need to do some lifestyle things. And when I said to her, I'd lost during this journey over 3.5 stone, and because of all the changes I put in place in terms of my nutrition and my mobility and health, the first thing she said was, "Oh, how did you do that? Did you do that on the jab?" And
oh my god, this is just too much. This is a menopause clinic that you waited 2 years to get to see somebody.
Yes,
and you are, thank goodness that you had gotten yourself to a better place where mentally you were more stable and resilient to be able to cope with this.
Yeah,
I'm. There's so much I could say about this, but I'm not going to interject. At what point was the crossover between you doing the diploma and all of this experience?
Well, I'd left my role in HR because I just really couldn't function, and I knew that something had to change, that I had to do something for me. And my partner, bless him, was really, really supportive, and he said, "You just need to look after you." He's I'm really worried about what's happening to you at the moment, and you need to take care of you. Which was incredibly supportive. And at work, they were also saying to me, we're really worried about you. And everyone was worried about me.
But no one knew what to do.
No. I went for some counselling. I went for some help from the grief intervention team. And because my GP had told me that I was suffering from burnout and stress, and I think there was an element of stress and burnout. But I said at the time, do you not think this could be menopausal related?
So if we actually sat down with a bit of paper and we mapped out January 1, 20 whatever, and then we mapped out every appointment, every symptom, and someone had the conversation about menopause with you right at the get-go, do you think you'd have had a different trajectory?
Yes. Because after the clinic, I had then learned quite a bit on the course. I mean, we started the course in September, and I went to the clinic in November. And I thought I was really well prepared, and I had all the answers, had all the symptoms down. And I came away from that thinking, oh my goodness, I've started to do my training. I know a lot more than I knew before. And even I still can't get through as a healthcare professional.
That's scary. That's absolutely terrifying.
What's someone else going to do in my position? In between time, I got so desperate for waiting that I'd gone back the practice and said, look, I'm now off work. I really need some help for these menopause symptoms because I do believe they're having a massive impact on my anxiety, my confidence, and my whole kind of mental health. And they did an urgent referral for me. So I then ended up this January going to see a gynecologist this time. A completely different person. But in between, I'd seen one of the GPs in our practice. So we don't have a lot of GPs in our practice. And one of the female GPs that actually looks after women's health. And do you know what? I went to see her and I just sat there and I said to her, I so wish I'd seen you 2 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
Because I sat there and I said, this is what's happened. And I really kind of I don't want the medical service because I know you're really overstretched us. But quite frankly, my experience with the clinic was frightful.
Yeah. So I think, you're illustrating the challenge that we've got is that when someone's got the interest and they've done the training, they can provide you with a really good service. But because it hasn't been mandatory until last year, we've got a whole raft of doctors who don't have the depth of knowledge to understand and recognize early enough. And, it's you're too young, you're too early, you're too old, you're too this, you're too that, just go away and get on with it. Or treating a symptom in isolation. The fact that you've had, the ribs and the foot. Have you had a DEXA scan?
No, and since then I broke my wrist, and I'm now going through the fracture liaison service, and I have now been told that I've got a 6-week wait for a DEXA scan. And
I'm glad to hear.
I asked for one last year.
Will you come back and let me know how that goes for you?
I will. And they told me the waiting list for that was over a year. And so when I went to the fracture liaison service, they said to me, no, we'll get you into a different hospital where you only have to wait 4 to 6 weeks.
Only 6 weeks. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Look, we have an amazing national health service and I'm very grateful for it. So I will never diss it. I just wish that we could get some of the training sorted out a bit more quickly, and that every healthcare centre, every GP surgery had a specialist in endocrinology and hormones and in menopause specifically, and menstrual health disorders, because there's so many people waiting for decades to get the right help and support with menstrual health issues. And menopause is definitely, an issue that for so many of us are struggling and being challenged by. So look, you've had this 2 years. So everything you've just shared, you've got the background of all these kind of traumas in your life. You've come through the Menopause Coach Diploma. What were the kind of key things about whatever I delivered on the free 3-day course? Because what I deliver now and what you saw is actually quite different. But from that free 3-day course to coming on the diploma, what was the thinking process for you about why to invest in yourself to do this work?
I think the thinking process for me was very much, I don't want anyone else to go through what I've gone through. Because I know lots of people have things in their life that go on. That's just life. And lots of us being touched by different things. But I just didn't want someone to go through all that hassle and heartache and, having to give up their job basically because they just felt that they couldn't do it anymore. And then being dismissed really by the GP and the healthcare service. Even though in their isolation, they were all trying to do their best, but there's no join up. And so I kind of coming out of the diploma, what I learned was knowledge. And by no stretch of the imagination do I know it all at all. But
none of us do, because we're still learning. There's still so much research that needs to be done. What was your key takeaway during the time on the diploma? What were the things that stood out for you?
There were a couple of things. So there was the education from the experts, the medical experts, which were absolutely fantastic. I think lots of us came out of Dr. Urden's talk and just said, I just thought I wish she'd be my GP.
But she can be.
And also the other experts that came in that about coaching, so Sian with coaching, and how much difference just some small amounts of knowledge, education, and also the coaching and really focusing on goals could make. And I just wanted to be able to share that with other people. So wanted to help in the workplace because, I know from my experience, you talk about any issue around sickness, absence, and managers are really fearful of having the wrong conversation and putting themselves in trouble. But actually, that ends up with them not having conversation. And I'm a great believer in me to have those conversations. I've always been quite an open person, and in my career, I've always really listened to people and try to help and support them as much as I can.
And I think there's a really key thing in there, isn't there? The fact that it's actually for managers, it's not even about training them on what menopause is. It's got nothing really to do with menopause. It's about soft skills training. It's about being able to see in your colleague or hear or notice in some way, if you're working remotely, that they've changed, that they've shifted, that person's normal is not normal at the moment. And then what are the opening conversations? How do you create a conversation? What's the signposting? You don't have to solve the problem yourself as the manager, but you need to have the awareness, you need to have the skills to be able to intervene. And I think I am gutted when I speak to organizations, say, oh yeah, we've done line manager training. And I'm like, tell me about it. And they're like, oh yeah, this person came in or that company came in and they talked about menopause. And I'm like, and how did they teach the managers on how to notice, how to speak, how to interact, how to follow up before it became a performance issue? And like, no, this was about menopause. But that's not what we're trying to do here. The line management training is not about menopause awareness training. It's about soft skills. It's about management skills. And I think often that's where people get it wrong when they go in to do this work. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm so excited.
And they do manage it like a performance issue. Where line managers and leaders think they might be helping by, you're lacking in focus or you're really struggling with where you're supposed to be going with this. What I'll do is I'll give you some things that you have to meet each week. And actually, what that ends up doing,
puts the stress through the roof.
Absolutely puts the stress through the roof rather than saying, okay, I'm really concerned about you. What's going on? How can I actually really help you? Well, really opening up that conversation about what's going on for them and in what ways are they struggling, but what can they actually do to help them, and where do they signpost them? I mean, I experienced quite a few people in the workplace at the same time as me that were struggling. And I didn't really know where to signpost them. I did signpost them to like Menopause Matters and places like that. But I didn't really know how to have that conversation with them at the time. And
what would you do differently now? Where do you want to be in 12 months' time?
In 12 months' time, the two key things I want to do is help organisations to change that rhetoric and to really embrace those conversations, not just for menopause. I think they need to put it across the whole health arena, really, because particularly mental health and the impact of mental health, which is something that I've always been interested in. It's still talked about more, but not really. There's still a big stigma around it. And I think when you're in, I think the importance of explaining to people as well that when you're in a senior position, so like I was in a head of HR role, I was very isolated. I had no one that I could talk to. And yes, I talked to my boss, who was the CEO, and she was really good, but she wasn't sure how to help me.
Yeah. So are you looking to also deliver coaching for people? Because I can see your banner behind you, Ali Smith, Menopause Coach, Pause, Recalibrate and Reconnect. So how are you looking at moving your coaching services forward as well?
My coaching services, I really want to do one-to-one and group coaching, because that's what really is my passion, is working with people, helping them, supporting them, helping them to understand, and really going on the journey, guiding them on their journey. And that's what I've so enjoyed about working with the clients I've been with so far.
Fantastic.
Just really sharing in that journey, but so letting them know that they don't have to do this on their own. They're not alone, and they're not broken. They don't need fixing. They just need to find within themselves, or help someone to help them to find within themselves the tools that they need to be able to manage this, because they're still the same person. They're still capable. They're still strong. They're just dealing with a life transition, and
which none of us have been very well prepared for.
No. So that's the work that I'm really passionate about. But I do want to also help workplaces to really sort of wrap their arms around this, I think, rather than just touch on the surface.
Tick a box.
They need to really understand it. Understand it, and just change the culture around it.
So excited about following you over the next 12 months and seeing where you navigate to, what draws you in, because certainly my own journey, I started out doing one thing and it's become something else, and it's grown and developed. And I just love watching my grads, what journey, what pathway do they take, and what niche do they end up working for themselves in the mental health, in menopause. And you've just got such a lovely, wide, broad background to bring to this as well. Ali, thank you so much for your time today. I am super excited to have had the opportunity to get to know a little bit more about you. I think this is one of the things I love about my podcast, is that although we spent 18 weeks together, we don't get this one-to-one time. We've got snippets of it throughout the programme, but it's just so great to have time. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing what next year brings.
And thank you for all your time on the Coaching Diploma, and also to everyone.
Thank you for joining me on Women of a Certain Stage. I hope today's episode inspired you to think differently about menopause and the incredible opportunities this stage of life brings. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with 3 friends who need to hear this message. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us reach even more people. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Lauren Turin, or visit our website at womenofacertainstage.com to learn more about menopause coaching, inspiring events, and corporate training. Until next time, let's continue making a difference, one conversation at a time.